Yeah, we had an issue recently, so we came up today to take the next step in resolving that issue. So we came up to lodge to file a plenary summons against the Garda Commissioner. We were, myself and James here, and another friend of ours were standing outside a pub, not breaking any laws, just chatting, as you're allowed to do in a free country. And some Gardaí came up and asked us were we okay, and we said yeah, we're fine. And then their next question was they demanded our names, and they kept demanding our names. So we kept asking them questions such as, has somebody complained about us? Has there been a disturbance? And we asked them if they were peace officers, and they said yeah, they were. We asked them had there been a breach of the peace, and they said no, and they said there doesn't need to be one. And when we asked them had there been a crime again committed, they said no, and there doesn't need to be a crime committed. So they proceeded to continue demanding our names and eventually arrested us and transported us to a Garda station 8 miles away.
While at the Garda station we were in chains, and I approached the sergeant on duty, and I asked the sergeant on duty, I said, was it a standard procedure for the Gardaí to kidnap men off the street when they hadn't broken any laws? And he said, well, what did you do? I said, I didn't do anything. I said, why don't you ask your men here what we did? And they said we did fail to give the name. And they said, well, why didn't you give your name? I said, are we obliged to give you the name? And they took the handcuffs off us anyway. And it was kind of like a standoff in the Garda station for over an hour back and forth. And they tried their very best to get the names off us. I said, my name is private. I don't have to give that name to anybody unless there has been an offence committed. And I understand the law in relation to this matter. I said, are you also aware of the Irish Constitution? And the sergeant said he did understand the Irish Constitution. He said, are you aware of Article 40 of the Irish Constitution? And he said, what's that? I said, the fundamental rights of the citizen. I said, all citizens have inalienable rights, none to be given, none to be taken away. I said, are you going to take away my rights from me? And when I said that, he walked out of the room because he couldn't answer the question. So the problem that we have is that the Gardaí are not being trained properly in relation to how the implementation of the Public Order Act, and they're abusing the legislation in their use of it, and what they're doing is being selective in particular lines in the Public Order Act for the means of arrests of members of the public if members of the public are not adhering to their instructions, which is a flagrant abuse of their powers. And what we're trying to do is seek justice in relation to first of all the false arrests, false imprisonments, and also then the lies that were told to keep us there, and the lies that put us into a cell, and the behaviour of the guards in general, the dishonourable behaviour of the Gardaí, and also to seek, if possible, to seek a review of how the Public Order Act is enacted in the future and how it's being implemented and trained within the Gardaí at the moment.
Just in relation to the Public Order Act, Steve, the Public Order Act, especially that section 24, is 7 sentences. Now, when we asked the Gardaí to quote the section that they were arresting us under, they couldn't quote it. They either couldn't or they didn't. Now, if they don't know the wording of the section that they're arresting people under, how can they logically arrest people under it? Because they don't know what it says. Now, our experience from this occasion was that not only did they appear not to have read it, not be able to quote it, they've learnt it wrong. Because from the replies to the questions we asked, has there been a crime committed? And they said no, and there doesn't need to be a crime committed. And we said, have you got reasonable cause? And they said no, and we don't need it. So this is the opposite of what the section in the legislation says. What they seem to understand and think to be true is that they can go up to anybody, anywhere, any street, and arrest them if they don't go up and demand their names, and if they don't give the names, to arrest them. Now, the legislation does not allow for that. So it's not a matter of, we don't have a problem with guards. We have to have guards, and they're an essential part of the operation of our country. But you can't have people who are guards going around believing that they can go up to anybody, demand their names, and then arrest them if the name isn't forthcoming. They can only operate, the guards have parameters in which they work, called the law. They can't make up laws or change laws to suit themselves. They have to follow their laws, the same as everybody else, we're told, has to follow the laws. So it can't be one rule for one set of people and one for the others. And it's very dangerous if the Gardaí think that they can go up and arrest anybody, because that means, and it seems to be, that they are doing that. And that means that our rights under the Constitution and under the European Charter of Human Rights cease to exist anymore. And of course that can't be true, because our rights are none to be given, none to be taken away, inalienable rights. And the Gardaí are supposed to understand that, because those rights are enshrined in the Constitution, and when the Gardaí take their oath upon becoming a Gardaí, that's what they swear. It's in the Garda Síochána Act. The Garda oath says that, in words more or less to this effect, that they swear to uphold the Constitution and human rights. Now, what they did to us was breach the Constitution and human rights, and they didn't seem to see anything wrong with that. Gardaí are there to keep the peace and protect us. That's their job, and we thank them very much for it. It's fantastic. We absolutely must have guards. But the actions of the Gardaí that night could cause people such as ourselves or other people that did it to have a bad attitude towards the Gardaí because they mistreated us. Now, I don't have a bad attitude towards anybody, but I would say this: if the Gardaí do that all around the country, they're going to create so much ill feeling towards them from people who wouldn't normally have ill feeling towards them, that they'll turn the community against them, and that's the opposite of what's needed in a functioning society.